Maureen and Robert, let us wait for another 2 minutes. People are still joining the call. Okay, so they have messaged us that they will be joining. So let's wait for 2 more minutes and then we can start.
No problem.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, Maureen, I think we should start. We have most of the partners.
Sure. Let me share my screen, turn on my camera. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank you all for joining. I just want to do a quick brief introduction around how Microsoft sees the Business Central partner opportunity from an overall perspective. I'm the business group manager for business applications in the UAE, so covering business development strategy and the 360-degree view of the product and business development. So, what is the business opportunity that we're seeing? So, today we know that 73% of the purchase decision is complete before the customer even calls the supplier. So, everything is digital, right? It's a new consumer. And at the same time, customer experience is overtaking price and product. So, we already know this by now that it's all about customer experience because product and price is it's a commodity. They're pretty much the same, right? And then the organizations in the UAE, 94% are SMEs. So I don't have to tell you, many of you are in this business and know that the mass majority of organizations sit in this space with the support of the government initiatives and funding, and they're all using at least one cloud application, right? The vast majority. If not, they are also modernizing their IT and infrastructure. So if you take that all into consideration worldwide, if you look at ERP cloud opportunities, massive 8 billion. And it's usually sitting between the 10 to 99 employees area. That's where the largest opportunity is. This is where we're targeting. And in the UAE specifically, I can tell you the market opportunity in the next 3 years is around $300 million, right? So in the UAE only. So massive, massive opportunity. And from a dynamics perspective, we're actually second in terms of market share in ERP cloud across all segments. So we are nipping at the heels of number one. And why would you even consider this? If you have a successful modern work practice or Azure, you're doing some Teams, you're doing some Azure Synapse, why would you consider this? And simply, you can see in the growth numbers, right? You can see that there's a huge growth in partners selling D365 because they see the market opportunity, but also their customers are asking for this, right? So it's either you're going to provide it to your customers or you're going to get potentially Sage or Tally and other players, even Oracle and SAP are going down into SMEs now with B1 and smaller applications, right? And discounting heavily. So do we really want these players in our accounts? Salesforce can bring in Google, for example, from a CRM perspective, and so on and so forth. We need to ensure that we are sticky at the customer, that we're providing what the customer is requiring as a trusted growth advisor, right? We're seeing a huge increase in the average revenue per partner. So, almost double digits. So we are seeing growth with the revenue that the partners are making, not only the number of partners in the ecosystem. You have more than 6,000 partners selling D365, right? And Power Apps is booming, as you know, and that's the extension, the mobile application extension to our business applications, including Business Central. Just a couple of quotes of what our top partners are saying is that we chose Microsoft because of the innovation and the industry leading solution set. This is the lifeblood of everything we do. It's the heart of what the customer's client experience. So when you're talking about a customer's back office, you are talking about the core application that runs their business, their finance, their operations, their supply chain, right? It is what manages the cash flow of these organizations. And they simply have to have a solution. It could be Excel, could be a very basic accounting software like Tally, but they have to have something. And that's something they need to transform as they grow, but also in a post-pandemic world, seeing a lot of opportunities there in the remote world. Business Central with Office 365 is one of the best better together stories we have. If they're leveraging Office 365, whether it be the Outlook, the Excel integration, Teams, it is a story that is unbeatable when we go together. And then you add on top of it the analytics and the Power BI or potentially Azure IoT or advanced Azure services, and we literally have the best cloud offering in the market. Then you add the Power Platform. So again, taking data from Business Central, from the unstructured data of Office 365, leveraging the application, low-code application development, and the business processes on the Power Automate piece, that all can be integrated into very, very streamlined and efficient business processes. So any manual processes, any paper processes, these all can be replaced with the Power Platform. And if there are any extensions of Business Central, that can be done with the low-code tools. There are so many, let's say, aspects of the business that Business Central can cover, like financial management, as I mentioned, but also project management. So if you have a customer that's a project-based, could be IT services like yourselves, could be engineering or architecture, consultants would fall into this category. Anything around supply chain or sales and service from a mini CRM perspective is there. Of course, the Power Platform, as I mentioned. Now, we are presenting to you an opportunity not to be experts in this field. Okay, you might look at this slide and say, whoa, you want me to go out and pitch financial management? You want me to go out and pitch supply chain? This is not what my team or what my business does. And that's absolutely fine. What we are presenting to you is an opportunity to gain revenue, market share, and keep your customers from competition by working with an ISV solution, proven ISV solution that has this fixed implementation, has the pre-sale support for you, and you simply need to know the high level, open the door for the conversation. We will take it forward with you, help you close the deals, and you will get the incentives and the potential support, be the face for the customer. But we're just asking you right now to look at your Office 365 base, to look at your Teams base, to look at your Azure base and say, give us an opportunity to show you a single comprehensive solution. We are not the experts, but we will bring you the experts. And give us 1 hour to showcase to you. It's on every device, so this is something that you need to know. And you can manage things from within Outlook, right? So your customers that are living in Outlook, like I do, you can manage a quote to cash from within Outlook, right? Would that be something interesting for you? Yes or no? Let's have a conversation, right? Let's have a conversation about how this is perfectly integrated in Excel and that it has embedded AI and it can automatically create an invoice based on the natural language of the email. That's embedded AI. They don't need to do anything in terms of algorithms or it's actually from within the system. And then, of course, when you talk about the embedded Power BI, this is also an area where we differentiate ourselves with nice dashboards, easy to use, and can be leveraged from any mobile or tablet. So in summary, we're presenting to you an opportunity to be even more successful in the UAE, to leverage your existing knowledge around modern work, for example, around infrastructure, and add additional layers of services to your customers by simply introducing BAM BOOM into your accounts, sending some content to them, and getting us in front of the customer, right? The BAM BOOM ISV offering is in many regions across the world. It has, I don't know how many implementations already live. It's a standard fixed package, has support, and has pre-sales support as well. And this will help you be able to not only solve your customers' challenges, but expand even further with additional cloud services like data and AI, right? Like potentially IoT, many other scenarios. Once you have their back office, really the possibilities are endless. And this is my summary slide. There's sales and pre-sales support, right? With BAM BOOM, with the team to support you in the engagement. There's a straightforward fixed pricing, right? So they know exactly how much they're going to pay for this, which is a big differentiator in the market. It's very reasonable in pricing. Can be done in a week, can be done in 2 weeks, and they can be up and running and seeing value depending on the needs of the customer. And then you can increase your profit and monetization, right? So this is a huge opportunity for you. I encourage you strongly to take advantage of this ISV that's based in UK, doing a lot of business in the US, doing a lot of business in Ireland and many other countries, and they are coming to the UAE to work with you, and it's a unique opportunity for you to take advantage of. So I hope that you take it and take and invest the time to grow your practice. So that's it for me. If there are any questions, you can just post them in the chat window, and I will pass it over to Robert Pope from BAM BOOM to explain further how you can take advantage of this opportunity.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. Thank you very much, Maureen, for that introduction. I feel like you've done most of my job for me. Thank you. Thank you to the Reddington team for setting this up. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to spend the next kind of half an hour or so, maybe a bit less, just leave a bit of time for questions. I'm kind of going into a bit more detail on how our offering works. And I think fundamentally, I'm going to focus on a number of key things. One, really kind of where the money is to help explain how Dynamics drives revenue within your existing customer base. And I'm going to make a bit of an assumption that many of you are Office 365 or Microsoft 365 and Azure partners, and that Dynamics is something that historically has been perhaps something that's been a bit outside of your normal locker, normal kind of comfort zone. And I'm going to kind of talk through and give you a bit of an insight into where the money is and how we can kind of help you get access to that, not just the Dynamics revenue, but the other revenue that Dynamics unlocks. And actually, as a key kind of point to take away, the revenue opportunity in Dynamics represents a huge uplift in the kind of revenue that you're already seeing from your Microsoft 365 subscription revenue. Business Central and Dynamics 365 is a CSP delivered solution. And actually, broadly speaking, and I'll unpick this in a moment and go through exactly where this has come from, but one of the simplest ways to look at what the opportunity looks like in your customer base is for every pound or dollar or dirham that you're currently making on Microsoft 365 from a revenue perspective in your customer base, that would represent $8, pounds or dirhams in Dynamics 365. It's a high value workload, it's a higher value SKUs, and the margins are much richer. And I'll kind of unpick that in a bit more detail. But broadly speaking, the focus of today's this afternoon session is really to kind of explain the impact for you as a partner. I'm not going to go through the functionality of Dynamics as to exactly what it does to the end customer. That's part of the process we would help when we're presenting Dynamics to the end customer, how it works for them, how the benefits it provides to them. But this is really about the benefits for you as a partner. So I'm going to kind of cover the opportunity in SMB. I'm also then going to cover kind of what's changed and how our approach makes that different. And that deployment approach makes it quite easy for you to be able to understand how to position Dynamics to your customers, how to use Reddington in the background from a support perspective to be able to position these services, and also then how we work together with you as a worldwide winning partner to help deliver and add value to your customer base. So I think it's worth kind of taking a little bit of a sort of step back to understand where Dynamics has now come from and where Dynamics is fitting within that Microsoft ecosystem. Microsoft took a number of strategic decisions 4 to 5 years ago with regards to where Dynamics was going to fit into that SMB market space. A big part of that was really to make sure that Dynamics was brought in to the wider mainstream Microsoft ecosystem of solutions. Obviously, Azure, Microsoft 365. Dynamics had historically been a siloed business unit within Microsoft, and some big changes were made to bring it in to the main part of Microsoft and to bring it into programs like CSP that would mean that partners like yourself could transact the licenses. The other part was really the investment that Microsoft made in Business Central. For those of you who are not aware, Business Central is a platform, a SaaS platform aimed, as Maureen said, at SMB customers, those who are using products like Tally or Sage or QuickBooks or even NetSuite. But it's actually based on a product called Dynamics NAV. It's a hugely widely used product across the world. It's being kind of moved into that Dynamics 365 suite, which gives it the same kind of feel and licensing model as most of your customers will be familiar with in Office 365. And a big part of this is the white space that area represents from a business applications perspective. Less than 0.05% of Office 365 customers use Dynamics. They use other things, fragmented platforms, old on-premise pieces of technology. It's the last big white space. It's also often in your customer base the last solution that they have on-premise. And that therefore represents a huge opportunity to target that customer base with a best of breed platform in the shape of Business Central. And I think also, just to give you background on myself and where I fit into this, is I ran Dynamics SMB in the UK for about 5 years at Microsoft before moving to be the Chief Commercial Officer at BAM BOOM Cloud. So I've seen both sides of the fence, and I understand the momentum behind Business Central within the broader Microsoft ecosystem. So I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about one of the ways that Microsoft positions itself to customers and also where that kind of drives some revenue for yourselves. Microsoft sees a business as having a number of rooms in the house. Those rooms being the applications that those organizations need to use. So modern work, obviously Microsoft 365, business applications, Dynamics, applications and infrastructures, Azure, and data and AI, so Power Platform. Microsoft is the only one-stop shop who can deliver all of those solutions to an SMB. In fact, an SMB can run their entire business on Microsoft technology without the need to go to people like Google, AWS, Salesforce, Sage, Xero, QuickBooks, or any others. The other big part of this is you as organizations and partners look to support your customers. A big part of this is about how you help them grow. COVID has had different impacts in different parts of the world and is still ongoing in many parts of the world. But that has really kind of put a pressure point on businesses. Some have grown very quickly, some have shrunk very quickly, but all of them have needed this transformation with regards to how they can help empower their employees, give their employees access to the right information so that they can help their customers. Who bought what? How much did they pay for it? Can I access the systems I need to from home? How do I get more efficient about passing orders through my business, about shipping stock from my warehouse, about being able to manage the credit and the debt of my customer base? And how do I maybe change my model, change my products, my service to reflect the impact of COVID and social distancing and the fact that actually my shop may well be closed? All of those pieces of digital transformation are something that Microsoft sees as being part of its own kit bag, part of its ecosystem that Microsoft can provide as a hyperscale global cloud provider in all of those areas. And to put some shape on that, for many of you, I know you'll all play in the modern workplace room and the Azure or the apps and infrastructure room. And many of you often have this aspiration to move into the cool stuff, where the cool kids live. Data and AI, or AI, machine learning, cognitive services, where Microsoft is really kind of stretching the gap against the competitors. arguably not because Microsoft's a ERP provider or a business applications provider, but because Microsoft's a hyperscale global cloud provider. The technology that we see being baked into Business Central is born out of Microsoft's investments that are reflective of technology in things like Xbox and Skype. They're not the kind of pieces of technology that other vendors in the ERP space have access to or even have the funds to develop. So Microsoft is democratizing that AI. Really, when we start to look at the functionality to the end customer, the difference now is huge in the kind of technology that Microsoft is bringing to the table compared to the likes of people like Sage. But back to one of the comments that Maureen made about Power Platform being kind of the new huge growth area. Power Platform and data and AI and machine learning, cognitive services all rely on one thing, data. And actually, this is where you start to look at an SMB and start to think, well, actually, if that data is of poor quality, you can't do very much with it. You can't apply an AI or machine learning model onto an aging copy of Sage, for example, where the data is in a proprietary database. So you can't then do the cool stuff. So Dynamics and business applications is very much about fixing the foundations, getting that high quality data into an organization so that then you can leverage it moving forward. But let's talk about the money, because fundamentally, as partners, it's about growing your revenue, about growing your own footprint in those organizations. The figures you're seeing on your screen now are worldwide spend on IT. The billions of dollars is immaterial to a certain extent. It's the percentage that's far more interesting. Now, for many of you who play in modern work and apps and infrastructure, or in effect M365 on Azure, you're broadly speaking addressing about 60% of the IT spend of your customers. The other 40% is on the table and is being consumed by the likes of Salesforce and Sage and other organizations. So that 40% is there for the taking. And actually, when we start to look at where Business Central and Dynamics particularly has an impact on perhaps the things that you feel are more in your comfort zone. And actually, and if Maureen closes her ears quicker, we all know that Microsoft's real aim is to sell Azure. That's the key thing. Everything's Azure. The answer's Azure. What's the question? But actually, if we kind of understand how can you unlock that Azure opportunity in your customer base, just a couple of facts, and this data is taken from the UK SMB customer base, so 1.4 million customers. Broadly speaking, the Azure penetration is 10 times greater in Dynamics customers than it is in Office 365 customers. If the customer already has Azure, and you land Dynamics into that customer, you can expect to see that Azure spend double. And there's good reason behind that. Dynamics has gravity for data. It pulls data towards it. It also, in effect, sweeps up all the last on-premise parts of of a customer's ecosystem and customers' platforms. All the other systems that they've got on-premise that surround their current on-premise platform get shifted to Azure, because if you're already on Office 365, if you're already on Microsoft's cloud, you wouldn't put it anywhere else. So we see Dynamics unlocking lots of opportunity in Azure, particularly that currently is kept on-premise, because that anchor point is the traditional ERP or CRM platform that organization uses for its operations. The other part is churn. What we tend to see in the Microsoft 365 partners, and bear in mind we work across the UK, the US, Canada, Ireland, and obviously are now coming to the UAE, is a huge amount of churn in those Office 365 customers. There's, to a certain extent, a little bit of a race to the bottom with regards to that provision, but also to some extent, if you've sold Microsoft 365 to your customers, platforms like Business Premium, to some extent, there's little else you can sell on top of that. They've kind of bought the shop, and actually having something else to sell alongside that that's going to generate significant additional revenue is one, drives the revenue, but also protects the revenue you've already got. Dynamics has churn of less than 6%. If I think of most of the Office 365 partners that we've dealt with around the world, their churn is often anywhere between 10, if not 15, and in some circumstances 20, because actually M365 is not a particularly sticky solution. But to kind of drill down a little bit more on those numbers that I started with at the beginning, and this data point is taken again from SMB customer base, and I'm going to focus on the middle section. the bit that's kind of yellow or gold on your screen, depending on how it's come through. And that's really the mid-market where we position Business Central. It's the 25 to 300 employee space. And in that sector, if we look at their average spend on Microsoft technology, and this has been kind of zeroed down to $1,000 for Dynamics, we can start to understand how much Dynamics drives within a customer on a monthly basis. So, for example, if the customer was spending $1,000 a month on Dynamics, we would expect them to be spending about $460 a month on Office 365. So roughly half, or the other way around, double. So in other words, from an Office 365, we would expect their subscription on Dynamics to be double what they're currently spending on Office 365, or 2.17 if we're going to get very accurate about it. If I then start to look at actually what the margins are, and this is often a bit of a shock to Office 365 partners, and this again is not an exact science, I hasten to add, so please don't beat up Dharmesh and the rest of the Reddington team if these aren't quite where you see your margins coming through. But broadly, because margins on Dynamics and actually Office 365 are often quite complex. It's often not just a straight line. There's often rebates, customer ads, incentives, and various other pieces that fall into play. So take this with a pinch of salt, so to speak. But broadly speaking, if you sell a 12-month contract for $1,000 worth of Dynamics, you would expect to walk away with about $3,720 worth of margin. If you sold the same 12-month contract of $1,000 a month for Office 365, you'd expect to walk away with about $980 off that contract. So broadly speaking, kind of about a quarter, slightly more. But if you times that and use the fact that the subscription to Dynamics is going to be significantly larger than it is for Office 365 in the first place, and the margin is significantly bigger, you get to that $1 equals $8 metric, or $1 to $8.23 if you want to kind of carry the granularity of the calculation through. So in other words, for every dollar you're currently making on Office 365, Dynamics being sold into your customers would represent $8 of margin. So a little bit more about who we are, just to give you a bit of background. So we've disrupted the market for Dynamics over the last few years. We sell fixed price, fixed outcome packs, specifically designed to be sold through partner ecosystems. As an organization, we've been previously known as Cooper Parry IT, if any of you have heard of that brand name previously. We rebranded a few months ago as we've MBO'd the business and are taking it even further and faster from a global perspective. And to give you an understanding from a credibility perspective, we are multiple World Partner of the Year for Business Central. We won it in 2019. We were the finalists last year. We sit on the inner circle. We're the only partner in the world to have ever won that award twice. And that hopefully gives you some credibility about the model that we use. A lot of this is really about looking after the end customer, making sure they're happy, making sure that this works, and making sure that from a partnering perspective, our model allows you to scale. It allows you to add Dynamics to your portfolio and keep the customer. And I think that's a kind of a key part of that. So the way that we approach this is very different to a traditional professional services project. This isn't a case of scoping out with the customer and coming back with a number of days. That process, whilst very often works for some organizations, at the SMB level quite often doesn't. Often that's contradictory to what the SMB customer wants. If you kind of look at that from a partnering perspective, most partners want to sell as many days as possible and therefore make the project as complex as possible. And our approach, and for the customer, they don't want that. They want to buy the least amount and get the most amount of value. Our approach is very much more about, actually, this is fixed price, it's fixed outcome. You know what you're going to get, and crucially, what you're not going to get and how much it's going to cost. And also that means it makes it very SKU based and easy for partners to resell. And that's a big part of our model. And I think, and this expression is one that lands well in the UK and the US, and I think also in UAE. So apologies for those of you who don't get it, but we have an expression of the elephant in the room. As in, what's the big kind of thing that I'm sure you're all thinking about at this point in time? It all sounds awesome, but kind of where's the elephant? And the elephant is the licenses. And I think this is where our model works and has been incredibly successful. You keep the license. It's your customer. You bill the license. In fact, you bill everything. It's your customer. That $1 to $8 margin is yours. That's your reward and your bounty for in effect, owning the customer or owning the customer relationship. So that license piece is yours. The customer needs to buy three things. They buy the license. They then buy the packs. And these are the packs that I talked about earlier, the fixed price, fixed outcome. These stack up a little bit like Lego bricks. So in other words, the customer buys a number of these packs depending on the nature of their business. And these are just to give you some examples. There are other packs and there's a lot more detail in the background associated with these packs. But broadly speaking, it makes it quite simple for the owner or finance director of your customer to understand what they need to buy. In fact, your salespeople don't need to understand the nuances that are in, for example, the Startup Plus pack. You know, what are intercompany sending, receiving journals? To be honest, I'm not 100% certain. So I'm sure your salespeople would probably struggle with that. But if you're the finance director of an SMB customer, you'll know you want that, or not, as the case may be. Or that you want WIP calculations and WIP dashboard that's in Jobs Plus because you run a business that's a professional services organization. So this menu-based approach makes it easy for a customer to decide whether they're in the right ballpark from a price perspective. The customer needs to buy these packs to get Business Central, and we also have packs for Sales Professional to get it set up. So we include this as a one-off, all done and dusted. This sets up the system, gets their data in, helps give them training, and helps them go live. So they buy the licenses on a monthly subscription, they buy the packs, which gets the system set up and configured, and then they buy a managed service on an ongoing basis. And this is a per tenant price. So it doesn't matter how many users, they buy this per tenant. And actually this part again is really around providing them not just with support, not the it's broken, can you fix it, but it's also about helping from an advisory perspective. For many of these SMBs, our approach around what we call MVP, minimum viable product, is really about helping them get the best value out of Business Central. Microsoft has invested millions and if not billions of dollars building this platform. Our advice to a customer is use it as they've built it. Let's set it up correctly. Let's set it up in a hardened fashion that we've done hundreds of times before. That means that they can use it effectively. The other part about our delivery model, as I said earlier on, is it's not professional services from a day rate perspective. We don't deliver this as a number of days. We do the delivery model using a lot of templating, a lot of modeling, a lot of artificial intelligence and tooling that we've built in the background, which means the delivery is generally about 30 to 40% of a traditional project from a cost perspective and, interestingly, time. Our approach is to say to the customer, not what do you want, it's more this is best practice. You can have option A, B, or C. Which one would you like? And that helps guide those customers who in many cases have bought something like this previously and quite often had their fingers burnt because they've used a professional services based approach, which has ended up costing them more than they expected and become more complex because the lines of the partner were very much to try and sell as many days as possible, not the least amount possible. So when we start to talk about the kind of issues your customers are seeing, and as I said, COVID has had a big impact on this. One of the things that we can do is help train your salespeople and give them some more background. And this is just to give you a flavor of the kind of things that your customers will be seeing. We're not expecting your sales team to be able to position this and be able to talk extensively about accounting functions, for example. But your customers are going to be raising their hands and saying, we have too many manual processes. And we've grown through COVID, or we've grown over a period of time. We've got too many bits of paper floating around our business, or our reporting is poor. And actually, we need to improve it because COVID has impacted our business. We need to borrow money, and the bank wants to see far better, far more granular reporting than we are currently able to provide. Or that actually, we just want to see what's happening. Are we making any money? And our reporting, one of the key areas we see from a lot of platforms, like QuickBooks, for example, is that reporting is often a big area of concern and issue. Lots of other areas crop out of this. Things like we want a modern system. Things like we want everything Microsoft. And I think this is one of those kind of key areas that Microsoft really is building this momentum. This embedded solution that works within M365. A lot of the functionality when we demo Business Central, we're not talking about accounting functions and general ledgers and tax and things like that. We're talking about how you use AI and cognitive services to process an order in Outlook. For somebody who's using something like Sage or Tally, that's kind of Star Wars rocket ship type science technology. It's groundbreaking and it changes the way that their business will work. And actually, when we start to drill down into this, these are the kind of things we can help your sales team position. So we can help you land new customers. We can also help you if you've got customers who are using products like Great Plains or GP or Navision, which are the historic Microsoft products, which Business Central is the upgrade path to. We can help you run campaigns to switch people from platforms like Sage. But also, I think one of the key things is really around helping you grow your existing customers. For many of the partners that we work with in other territories, the margin and the revenue they make from Dynamics is very nice to have, but their real big incentive is the impact it has on their Azure spend. And that's kind of, in some circumstances, exactly why they do it. They don't do it for the Dynamics piece, they do it for the impact it has on the Azure and also the impact it has on their churn. The other big part of this is it helps your team start to have a more business-led conversation. Move that conversation out of talking to the IT manager, the IT director, and start to have a business-led conversation, which adds more value. So as I kind of wrap up, some of the things we can help you with go-to-market. We can help you understand who in your customer base is a likely target. As I said, we've done this many times before, so we got quite good at being able to look at a partner's customer base and identify within that base which are the customers that are most likely to find this appropriate and to buy into this, rather than trying to target every single one of them. Let's be a little bit more specific. We can help with a bit of sales training. We don't do much sales training. We don't really want your sellers to become experts, if we're honest, because actually that kind of defeats the object of the exercise. We're making it simple. We're making it something that's menu driven, and actually the customer can very much make their own decisions and understand what they need to buy or otherwise. That other part, the last piece, is the way that we can deliver this very quickly, very easily. We deliver the best support in the world. We deliver the packages at a platform at a very consumable price point, which makes it simple and easy for those customers to understand what they're getting. And these are the kind of systems that we see, if your team are looking out for platforms, people using things like Sage, QuickBooks, Sun, Infor, Xero. There are lots of different nuances as to why these products will be having an impact on those customers. Some of them will be outgrowing them. Some will be finding them too old. Some will be finding the reporting very poor, like QuickBooks, for example. But we can help identify that within your customer base. So my name is Robert Pope. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, the Reddington team. I'm happy to take some questions. I'm not sure if we're going to open up for questions, but also kind of to move on to next steps with you as partners. Hopefully this was interesting, and I think you'll get a copy of the slides as part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. We still have some time, so partners, if you have any questions to Robert or to Reddington team, we are open for that. Any clarification required on the presentation?